All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Quill and Query podcast. My name is Brandon Hall. As always, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Ash. Ash, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good despite the rain. How about you?
Yeah, like we said earlier, just
Yeah.
trying to get through this gloomy weather. It's been about
Yeah.
2 weeks of it, so
Yeah.
I'm desperate for some sun, and I'm someone who honestly prefers the rain sometimes, but 2 weeks has been enough. I
Yeah.
need a break.
I need some balance, some
Yeah.
readjustment. Yeah.
Well, we have a fun episode today. We're going to talk a lot about some fantasy tropes and an interesting news story that showed up on my feed today. So I threw that in as well because I thought it would be fun to touch on. And I'm sure our audience will have some thoughts on it as well. But before we get into all those fun topics, Ash, how is your reading going? I know you've got an interesting selection of reads here.
I do. I'm still working my way through Shadow of the Gods by just John. Who is it? I can never remember his name. John Gwynn.
John Gwynn. Yeah.
And that's been fun. I've been waking up earlier and earlier every week in the mornings to have some alone time. And then on Sunday, I started a fan fiction, and I didn't realize how long it was. It's like 844,000 words.
Oh, wow.
So I did nothing but do that yesterday and just read and was enjoying it. And I was like, why is this taking so long to get through? It's good.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, it's like 84 chapters and that many words. So anyway, that's what I've been reading. What about you?
Yeah, I'm still working my way through The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. Loving it though. It's typical Abercrombie, I would say, if you haven't
Yeah.
picked it up yet. So strong characters. It definitely seems different in the pacing of the plot from his usual works. Because I think I've mentioned before how First Law starts off pretty slow, especially
Yeah.
with book one. You kind of don't know where the plot is going until close to the end of book one. This one is not like that at all, though. It's very fast paced. So if you were maybe turned off by that in First Law, you might want to give The Devils a try because it's almost like too fast for me at some points. Not quite there yet, but
Interesting. Okay.
it's just like the complete opposite of what I'm used to as far as the pacing goes. But it hasn't hurt it yet, and I still love the characters,
Nice.
which pretty typical for an Abercrombie book for me. So yeah, still working through that and just trying to not rush myself with it because there's so many books on my TBR that I want to get to. But I did a blog post recently. I think you may have seen it about slowing down.
Yeah.
So trying to do that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that's something I struggle with. But yeah, still The Devils.
Still The Devils. All right, we'll see where we're at in a couple weeks. I wonder how far you and I both get.
Yeah.
In our books with all this stuff going on.
Right.
But no, that sounds great.
Looks like Nicole just finished an ARC read of A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim. I hope I'm pronouncing the last name correctly. It looks like it might be cut off on my phone, but very cool. I have not.
That sounds great.
I'm not familiar, but I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know if you liked it or not. No spoilers, because I know you got to give your full review, but let us know if it was good.
All right, well, that's going to do it for reading updates. I don't have any podcast updates or audience questions to get into, but I just want to say thank you to everyone who has subscribed to us on YouTube or been watching the show. We've been performing pretty well on YouTube, which is really nice to see. So yeah, if you're new to Quill and Query, we'd love to hear more from you about what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see more of, things like that. You can comment either here on the live or on our YouTube videos, and we'll take all your feedback into consideration. But just wanted to say thanks for all the recent support.
I second that. I think we do have a bit of an update, don't we? Next, we're going to start interspersing. Okay.
We're writers, I promise. I don't know what the correct word is, though.
Yeah. Anyway, moving past that. I think we're doing some shorter episodes going forward every now and then.
Yes, that's correct.
Not like in terms of just like only 20 minutes or so, but I think like 45-minute episodes.
Yeah, I think that's what we were aiming for some of our episodes. So as we get into season 3, Ash and I have a lot of fun topics to discuss. We have a lot of episodes planned already. Some of them are going to be a little bit shorter, like she said, like more in the 40-45 minute range, just because one, sometimes we've had to skip episodes either due to being super busy in a given week, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it is a bit of a stretch to find enough content to fill the 90 minutes. So rather
Yeah.
than meander for too long, I figured why not just have some shorter episodes where we can just have like a half as long discussion on something and still deliver on the quality front, but maybe it doesn't have to be as long. So yeah, throughout season 3, be on the lookout for some of those shorter episodes.
Yeah.
Um, Still gonna talk about lots of fun topics. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not gonna take us as long as maybe a full episode would.
Yeah. And I wonder, for those of us who do listen, Nicole as well, but any of
Mhm.
our longer, longer listening fans, my mind is a complete shot today. Like, so apologies for my obvious horrible wordsmithing already. Um, yeah, it'd be interesting if that works better for people too, that you don't
Mhm.
have such a long episode to listen to every other week. Not that we aren't fantastic, but yeah, it just seems like it's going to be a little less pressure off of Brandon, especially, but also staying consistent. So we're still doing longer episodes, but every now and then we'll do a shorter episode.
Yeah,
Maybe just on like a pertinent topic or anything anyone else wants us to talk about. Um, we've been having a hard time getting people, I think, engaged in. Not Nicole. Nicole is
yeah,
she's her own reigning queen here, but yeah, just getting feedback from people, what they want to hear, if they have any people that they know that want to be interviewed. So we're working on that, but would love the feedback if you guys have it in terms of topics you want to listen about.
yeah, yeah. And I had a thought that I was going to add on to the end of that, but I totally lost it because it's Tuesday and I have
It's
to
Tuesday.
be at the office at 5 in the morning tomorrow. So
Oh my gosh! Did you have yesterday off?
yeah, so I only go into the office like very infrequently. It's like usually once a month. It's just tomorrow is that day. So
Ah, I see. I see.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah, no thanks. I'm not about that life.
Yeah, I only leave that early because if I don't, traffic is
Oh yeah,
twice as long, and I'd rather
yeah,
just be working than be sitting in traffic.
yeah. I used to work at the and I used to work up in Alexandria, but I lived
Mhm.
in Richmond. I was doing an internship, and I would have to leave the house at 4:30 in the morning to get there by
Oh,
7.
yeah, that's so
Just for like
rough.
traffic and stuff. So I totally understand. I get it. So Godspeed tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully it's a smooth drive.
Yeah.
We do have one indie release to spotlight, and that's going to be Skullterra by Nightmare
Oh
by
yeah.
MT Zimni, which is one of our fellow anthology authors. So
Woohoo!
congratulations. This comes out May 29th. So if you are a fan of her previous work, I know she has a quite a large following, so she absolutely does not need my help. But just want to give her a shout out anyway, and just say congratulations on the upcoming release. I know she's been super excited about this one.
Super exciting.
All right. Well, Ash, before we get into our fantasy tropes, I want to talk a little bit about this breaking news story that showed up on my feed earlier today. I couldn't leave it out of the episode because it was just so like so ridiculous to me. But the story is about a fantasy author who left an AI prompt in their published work on Amazon. So it was in the ebook, in the print book, and readers caught on to it. And yeah, it the reaction was not what you, or I guess the reaction is exactly what you'd expect. People were not
Yeah.
very happy, understandably so, because I don't believe the book was marketed as being AI generated in any way. So yeah, so for anyone who didn't see, I'm not going to name the author or the book or anything, but I'll just give you a brief summary of the news story. But recently there was a romantasy book published on Amazon, which, as I said, had an AI generated prompt in there. So if you've ever used ChatGPT or any other AI generative tool, at the
Mm-hmm.
end it'll give you like a here's the content you asked for, blah blah blah, spiel, like, do you want me to make any changes? It's just
Mm-hmm.
getting your feedback on what it generated. So that was the part that was left in the book. It was like, I've reworked the passage to be more like this, and she left that part in. And to me, the worst part of the story was that she was trying to mimic another author's style. So the prompt literally
Yeah.
said, I tweaked it to match this other author's style, which yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that specifically, but yeah, so the book was quietly updated to remove the prompt, but no public statement has been made, and it looks like the author has a very minimal online presence, so
Mm.
she hasn't responded to anything, and yeah, it's a really funny situation, but it's also not. But Ash, I just rambled for quite a bit.
No, you're
So
good.
what do you think about this? Did you see this story before I put it in here?
I
And
did
what?
not. That's why I was kind of quiet while you explained. It was a great explanation, and I was reading the article as you went. I think, yeah. I mean, obviously, it's embarrassing for everybody because it's like not just the reader, because as a reader, you're spending the time and energy reading what you think is original content, or as original as you can be nowadays, original content created by someone who cares deeply about the world that they are building and taking the time and the effort to publish all of this stuff, self publish,
Mhm.
and then come to find out that they're lazy. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just lazy. It's lazy and it's embarrassing and it's like, yeah, it further erodes the community, especially the self-published and indie publishing community. I think readers are going to have a harder time now. And again, I don't know how true this is actually going to be, but my initial thought is I'm going to start to feel a little like I'm going to have to double check that the authors I see in the self-published space when they put out a book,
hmm,
does it say not AI? Does it have anything to do with that? Because to me that's just the complete antithesis of what we're all trying to do here. So I
yeah,
don't know, I think it's just going to create more mistrust. I think people are going to monopolize on this, and now maybe some are going to be extra careful
hmm,
in ways that maybe in the future we would have caught them, or say some mistakes would have been made. I don't know, I
yeah,
think it's, yeah, wholly embarrassing. uh I, I'm not Uh, I'm not sure what I would do, especially for people who aren't PR trained and they're all self taught. So
hmm,
I'm not sure what the correct move here would be. I would say something, as an author. If I got
yeah,
caught, it would be really hard and it's not fun. It's like when you get in trouble at any point in time, you
yeah.
run the gamut of emotions, right? But yeah, I think your fans deserve an apology, and maybe it's time to take a step back from writing for a while and reevaluate why you're doing it. I think that's like the thing. And I looked a little bit into the book series. It, not that ratings matter half
Hmm.
the time on big platforms like Goodreads, but yeah, I mean, if you're trying to make this a career, that's the whole point of craft, right? Is to just
Yeah,
get better and better. And it looks like the first novel that came out was published this year, and then this is about the drama that happened was book number 2 that came out.
interesting.
So it's a pretty quick turnaround, in my
Yeah,
opinion, unless they wrote the book like 1 and 2 like together and then they're just like pacing their publishing out. I don't know, it's suspicious. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, two books in what is not even
it's not even
five
the end
full
of
months
May
yet.
yet.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot.
that's concerning. So, but yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. Like, I think it's going to create more mistrust when people go into the self-published space to look for
Mm-hmm.
books, which I think is unfair to a lot of indie authors who, put a lot of hard work and
Mm-hmm.
soul into their books, and they don't just put in a prompt and not even
Mm-hmm.
proofread it. And that's got to be the most interesting part to me, is that the prompt wasn't caught, which to me says you didn't even care enough to proofread
Yeah,
the book that you were putting out.
she
So
probably put it through AI to edit, and
yeah,
and it didn't recognize its own. I mean, yeah,
yeah, it's crazy to me because it's one thing to use AI, not defending like the use of generative AI to create a book, but it's another thing to like demonstrate that level of carelessness. Like, you don't even care about the quality to that extent that you missed that in
yeah.
proofreading. I don't know.
And you're not
It,
respecting the authors that you're asking the AI to pull from,
yeah,
right?
that
Like
too. That
it's literal. It's like pseudo stealing. You know, you
yeah,
it, you're not even trying to do the work to mimic an author you admire enough to
Hmm.
utilize style with in your own novels. You know what I mean? That sentence
Yeah.
didn't really make sense, but like, dude, it's like such a disrespect, and it shows that that like authors should be worried. It's
Hmm.
like I had a conversation with my dad a few weeks ago, and he and I are very much not aligned on many topics, and one of them was like AI stuff, right?
Hmm.
And we were kind of debating about the news that came out that Meta had been training from like all like this mega stolen horde of novels that had
Yeah.
been pirated. And you know he conceded. He was like, well, if this was all like actually pirated stuff and not like, anyway, there were all these caveats, and I was like, I don't know, like these authors go and they put their time, effort, and money, they get picked up, and it's their intellectual property. Like,
Hmm.
unless you specifically agree to have your things used to train AI, even print media, it's like what are yeah, it's stealing. You've effectively stolen. And
Yeah.
most AI is using stolen, pirated works. So for an author who's recently published their book to then go and ask AI to steal effectively from another author, I think is just, I mean, that would be the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
If she was a traditionally published author, I mean, that would end her career
Yeah.
effectively.
Totally.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. Sorry, that was a long rant.
No,
I
it's.
just can't.
I think it's a worthy topic because
God,
to
what
me it
is?
begs the question of what is your goal with putting out a book then? If you don't want to put in the work to write it, you don't want to put in the work to presumably do any of the
Yeah,
creative side of things. So why do you want to write a book? Is my
right. To
like
me, it's
it's
that it's about fame. Then at that point,
yeah.
it's about being big on TikTok or on Bookstagram.
Hmm.
That's what it boils down to. And now I'm like, how many others are out there like that? Which sucks because you want to feel like
Yeah.
you're innocent until proven guilty. But we
Hmm.
keep getting hit in the community with these like, yeah,
Yeah.
it
I
just
think
really pisses me
yeah, I think the part that like aggravates me the most is the trying to steal the other person's style. Like it's one thing to just prompt and whatever. I don't like that either, but deliberately trying to profit off of someone else's actual
Yeah,
hard work in honing their author voice is, that person presumably has spent years writing and putting in the effort
right.
in the work. So you're just trying to piggyback off of their
Mm-hmm.
success at that point.
No, 100%. I think it's horrendous, and I I think the black backlash will be enough for her. She probably will no longer be able to produce work that people want to read after this. But who knows how long that will stay? Time does kind of wash away a lot of people's transgressions, but I hope we hold indie authors and self-published authors like to account when stuff like this happens. I think it's not even, I'm not trying to come from a place of anti AI because it can be useful in certain circumstances. It's the Gen AI stuff
Hmm.
that I'm really just having a hard time accepting, period, in a creative space.
Yeah, totally.
I have friends who use it to write long emails and do all this kind of stuff, and I have my own pretentious morality around stuff like that. I'm like,
Hmm.
you can't use your own brain to write like
Yeah.
an email or whatever. But okay, fine. But when it comes to creatively creating something, I'm like,
Yeah.
if you use it at all, I don't know. It's yep, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. And we have actually some fun um, episode topics. I don't know if you saw in our planning doc, but regarding AI topics in like very specific ways. Because I
Yeah.
know in the past we've talked about doing like more AI focused episodes, and so I just grabbed a bunch of really specific topics for how AI is used in the publishing industry and just
Yeah.
creative industries in general, and just so yeah, if you want to hear more of our thoughts on those, stay tuned for those future episodes
Yeah,
because
that's a great idea to delve into.
mhm,
It's interesting because I like know it gets used so often, and I think it can be a really useful tool in terms of like, are you stuck in a rut? have it create like a crazy prompt for you
Hmm.
or whatever, like, just to come up with something, but it shouldn't be something that you are using. It should be like a weight, right, that you use to exercise this one thing. It's like, okay, I'm practicing here. Not
Yeah.
not to mention that you can like go on Amazon or to your local library and get like a book of writing prompts from
Hmm.
like so yeah, I don't I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, Mick says laziness hurts your brain. It's muscle that needs exercise.
It is.
That
It's
is
true.
very true. I know people who have become, I think, too dependent on like things like
Yes.
ChatGPT for things like you said, like writing emails, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
every email is ChatGPT, and
Yeah.
it's like at some point you're forgetting how to do it yourself.
Correct. Correct.
So
I
yeah,
fully agree.
totally agree. But yeah, that'll be enough on the doom and
On the
gloom with
AI.
AI
Yeah.
for now until we get to those future episodes. So we can dive into the fun topics for now.
Drama. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so Ash, fantasy tropes. We got
Haha.
a huge list of them here to
We
go
do.
through, talk about what we like, what we don't like, and just our overall thoughts on some of these tropes
Yeah.
that are pretty common or maybe some uncommon ones throughout the fantasy space. So I'm going to do something different. I'm going to let you pick the first trope we go to because I feel like I
Okay.
start every conversation on the topics and I want you to have a chance to do that.
That's so funny because I was going to ask if I could ask what your favorite trope is from the
Oh,
list. So
from
why don't
okay.
you start us off? In
Okay.
terms of like you, I'm asking you what your favorite trope from our list here
Yeah.
is.
Okay, well, I'm actually going to jump to the end here. I think the this price of winning trope that you have at the end of the list
Ah.
is got to be
Okay.
my favorite one.
Yeah.
I like when there's like a bittersweet ending. So if
Mm-hmm.
something comes at significant personal cost or some other sacrifice that has to be made, I think those stories are the most impactful for me. So knowing that the protagonist or our cast of characters had to undergo significant challenges and then end up losing something of value to them,
Mm-hmm.
but still ultimately win their broader goal.
Yeah.
The I This is probably my favorite one from the list. I think it's easy to do well. I think it makes for a really powerful, impactful story. So yeah, I don't have a whole
Yeah.
lot to add on it. I just, out of all
That's
of
your
these,
fave.
this one is my. We got a
Nice.
comment from Nicole here. Except when the MFC has to give up her powers in order to save everyone. Hate
That
that.
is a
Yeah.
common romantasy fantasy romance trope that I
Oh, okay.
am 100% over in the same, like, I feel
So
the same about Nicole.
I am not an avid romantasy reader, so I was not aware that this is like a huge thing. I could see how that would get tiring after like the second time though.
Mm-hmm.
So um
It's actually pretty common, so it doesn't even it's not even just in fantasy, but I
mhm.
think you can find it a lot throughout, like, even like I'm sure I'm going to have some folks disagree with me fully on this, and I'm not like a Tolkien scholar, but I
Mhm.
have I've read enough. I've watched the movies. I've whatever read the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
But like, Arwen choosing to give up her own like power to stay with the man she loves. Okay, great. That trope back then was great because you're like,
Mhm.
oh, what a worthy sacrifice. But it's used in literally everything now. In any
Yeah.
like John Wick movie, it's the wife and then it's the dog and then it's like
Yeah.
it in every single iteration of like a male main character dominated story. Oftentimes there's like, I've lost a wife, I've lost a sister, and I'm not saying these things aren't important or can be important to a story, but it's usually the sole driving motive for the
Mhm.
male main character in almost every single story that is told.
Mhm.
And when it comes to the fantasy romance or the whatever fantasy, more often when it is written by women, I've noticed recently that there's still that the main character who is a woman has to give up the most important thing to her.
Mhm.
And it's usually done in a way that is only self, like, I don't know how to say this correctly. Maybe Nicole can help. But like, oftentimes it doesn't serve a good enough purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, there's nothing wrong with having diminished powers or like losing a limb or something like that. Like, that's why that's one of my favorites, and that's why I put this one in here too, because I
Mm-hmm.
love, there has to be an equitable exchange for winning, in my opinion. It's very much
Yeah.
like Full Metal Alchemist in that way, right? Like, if you're into anime, it's like the
Yeah.
equitable exchange. And I think that's what makes a lot of fantasy novels so great, because the magic systems tend to be limited. There's a lot of like, oh, balance here. Like, you can't just conjure something from thin air or whatever. There are physics involved, even in these worlds. But it always seems that all the time, the female main character is having to sacrifice more than anyone else
Mm-hmm.
for getting very little in return. So, anyway, so yeah, that's, sorry, that was all long.
Oh no, it's all good.
Long
I
rant. It's just a tired plot, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that makes
trope.
sense. And now that you have both pointed it out, I do have some like romantasy books that I want to get to at some point. I just not as avid of a reader
Yeah.
of it as maybe you
Yeah.
and Nicole. So now I will probably pick up on that more though when
Yeah.
I'm reading it. So
It'll be glaringly obvious. And in
yeah,
not all of them, to be fair, not all of them, but in the big popular ones, it's oftentimes the woman having to, yeah, like
hmm,
Nicole says, like, to save the male main character, to save the love of her life, to save like the kingdom that is owed to her, whatever. She has to like become this kind of shell of a person and start over again.
yeah,
And I'm like, I don't know. It could be twisted now in a new way. I think there's opportunity to change the trajectory of a trope like that, because I think it can be really powerful if done correctly. But yeah, the cost of winning is always fun. It's like, who did you lose? What did you lose? Yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
Looks like Nicole says, "Dare I say, Addie LaRue?" I think we have the same view on that book.
Yeah. Yep. Don't even, I can't go there. Can't go there.
Any other thoughts on like the price of winning trope in general though?
It's one of my favorites. It's one of my, yeah, I think it's always great to see the characters try and grapple with the fact that there will be a price. I think very rarely, at least recently, what I've been reading is the characters, and I think this is a good way to round a character, even if they're like the unwilling hero or whatever, is that coming to the realization that you are going to lose something important or integral to
Hmm.
yourself or to your country, your friend group, or whatever, and still going through with that anyway in order to triumph over evil in whatever capacity, I think is, it's so human. It's such a human thing to do that against all odds we still do it regardless of how it will affect us, as a way to make a better world or to better your station or something. I don't know. It's a very human trope, which I like.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think especially for like the kind of stories that you and I seem to like to write,
Mm-hmm.
it just grounds it more. It makes it feel more impactful for
Yeah.
both the characters and the reader.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'm going to jump to the other end of the list now and say, get your thoughts on chosen ones. So probably one of the oldest tropes in fantasy,
Yes. Yeah.
and maybe one of the most overdone. Um,
Yes. Also.
what what are your thoughts on chosen ones in a book? I know some people who will just refuse to read a book with a chosen one plot, even if it's like subverting that trope. So, how do you feel about it?
I can't really say this with having like the whole Harry Potter collection behind me and be like, I
Just
hate the trope. I don't.
we're gonna cover.
We're gonna, yeah, we don't say her name, but unfortunately, they were a big impact on me and my childhood. Um, I still love them, but begrudgingly so.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I think the Chosen One is interesting. I think I read so much of the Chosen One stuff that I've strayed away from that in terms of
Hmm.
my current choices, because yeah, it's just overdone and tired at this point. Um, I haven't read any fresh take on this recently that isn't just kind of a tired like redo of all previous iterations of. Um, I honestly think that's why the anti-hero has become such like a fun new trope in fantasy.
Yeah.
because the chosen one kind of has this like glossy, if they're the chosen one, then they'll be okay despite whatever ups and downs throughout the plot that they have. Yeah, I don't know. When I see chosen one plot, I'm kind of like, okay, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, it's just kind of tired. I think not that it
Hmm.
can't be done in a cool new way, and I'm probably missing. There are thousands of books out there that might do it better, but yeah, since Harry Potter, and then I think what was the like Hunger Games? Like I loved the Hunger Games, but then the whole like next gen of dystopian had the chosen one
Hmm.
trope, and I yeah, it just kind of yeah, it just bored me after a while.
Yeah.
Is that your least favorite?
I wouldn't say it's my least favorite. I think it's one that when I see it in a book, it's the one I'm probably going to be most skeptical about
Mm,
initially. It won't stop
mm-hmm.
me from reading or anything, but I think, like you, I read so much of it growing up that if I'm going to read it now, I need to see some sort of new take or subversion of the trope.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so, yeah, like it can't just be the same chosen one arc that I
yeah,
read a million times growing up. It's got to have some sort of fresh take and twist that I haven't seen before.
yeah.
And I, like you, I don't think I've seen it used very often, even in that sense. As of
Mm-hmm.
late, I just think it's something that fantasy has kind of steered away from, knowing that it
Mm-hmm.
is done. It's been done so many times. So,
Yeah.
the genre has kind of moved on to new things, like you said, with anti-heroes becoming more
Uh-huh.
popular and
Yeah.
things like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it does cause skepticism, but it doesn't like turn me away right away or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. It doesn't turn me away, but it's not. I think also I'm going to keep bringing this up over and over.
Mhm.
So, apologies. But I think that's why, like, I'm so exhausted by it is because it is so frequently a trope used heavily in the romantasy genre. And there's a subtle difference between the two. But, uh, yeah, it's always like, oh, I'm a weak woman, whatever. And turns out I had this intrinsic power inside me all along. And now, after 5 months, I'm now perfect. And you're just kind of
Yeah.
like, eh, okay. It just doesn't read very believable, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I've yet to see like a chosen one chosen by the people trope. Like,
Hmm.
it's chosen one because something has happened to them or they have like this intrinsic power or have been kidnapped and stowed away or whatever. But I've never seen like a chosen one where it's like chosen by the people.
Yeah.
Like there's
That would
nothing
be an interesting take on it.
inherently yeah, there's nothing inherently spectacular about them, but for whatever reasons, a group has decided for whatever reason to make this person their
Yeah.
leader or yeah, I don't know. I haven't really seen that, so
Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting you say that, actually, because as you were posing that like sort of take on it, there is sort of a character arc in First Law from Joe Abercrombie
Oh,
that
okay.
kind of fits that.
Oh, cool.
Um, it's actually very interesting to read too, because the character, it's like, without spoiling anything, people are pulling strings to
Mm.
make him appear favorable in the eyes of the public, and he's like
Ah.
very oblivious to it. So it's like a chosen
Oh,
one
cool.
by the people who has no idea why this is happening. So it's very,
Nice.
very interesting to read. Yeah.
Oh, that is interesting. Yeah, I want to see more of that. I want to see more of like, yeah, chosen, but is it for good reason? Kind of a
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, Ash, I'll let you pick the next one from
Okay.
this list. You can go down the list in the order, or pick which one is your least favorite, whatever you see here.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna choose my least favorite, and I think it's literally damsel in distress. No one is surprised
I
here, I
totally forgot
think.
we even had that one.
Yeah. Again, one of the reasons is it's forgettable.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it goes to the conversation about you know,
Hmm.
what we were saying earlier of just kind of like the female main character always has to be some like weakish, small thing, um, and only existing to fuel the main male character's
Hmm.
character arc. And if not that, to serve like a greater purpose, but only if it fits within this like very, very gendered, heteronormative kind of
Yeah.
framework. And I've read a couple fantasies or romantices, fantasy romances where it subverts that a little bit, but I don't know, I haven't seen anything super, and I fall into this too because mine kind of follows similar lines, but I try really hard to like actively make my female main character not the strongest, certainly not the smartest oftentimes, but at least like already have a sense of agency and self-worth so that she
Hmm.
doesn't fall prey to this. And my male main character, there's no sense of like I need to protect her because, right, like there's no,
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't know, it falls into this like binary that I'm really tired of seeing just
Hmm.
in general. So yeah, the damsel in distress is no longer one that I find. It's cute when you're a kid,
Yeah.
but I think in like, or like in Disneyland, but in fantasy now I'm just like it just doesn't feel rooted in reality. Unless
Yeah.
again you choose to subvert that and then the damsel in distress was like a ruse all along and that's how the
Hmm.
cat, whatever, I don't know. But I just don't
Yeah.
really, yeah, I hate that one most out of all of the ones listed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's understandable. I think that's like a almost a relic of stories from a time where, it was very male dominated space. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I think moving forward, stories have just moved away from that
Yeah.
more and more over time. So it's one of those things that you look at now in like a modern
Hmm.
read and it just feels out of place.
It does. Yeah. It's
Because
like,
to
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to me, it just feels like you're taking the agency away from the female character. Like she's solely dependent on this male
Yeah.
counterpart, which is very different from reality for most people. So
God.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't like characters that don't have agency and are really just there to further push someone else's arc, like for most
Yeah.
part anyway. So when it's like so blatantly obvious, then yeah, it's a little hard to read.
No, it is. Yeah, I haven't read anything good recently that has that kind of trope, or at least at all, which is nice. It is very
Hmm.
like Arthurian, it's
Yeah.
very like Brothers Grimm esque. So it is probably just, at least it doesn't have its place right now in terms of reflecting what's going on in the world. It doesn't even
Yeah.
matter like what gender you are or whatever, but it's not very like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't do a good job at putting a mirror up to the real world if you use like a damsel in distress. It's like those people exist, of course. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there aren't damsels in distress out there. I just mean like if you're gonna tell an effective story, it's like I don't know if that's the way to go. But that's just my
Yeah.
opinion. That's my
No, yeah.
opinion.
Totally agree. Also,
What?
just a warning to everyone because the rain is going on and off. Hopefully, I don't disconnect here.
Okay,
But
no
just
worries.
if that happens, that's why.
All
Were you
good.
gonna pose a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's your least favorite on the list?
Well, I forgot we had that one there, so I'm gonna try and pick a different one because that honestly that would probably be it.
Okay, nice.
So let's see.
I'm gonna like highlight these when we finish. I mean, we can always like go back and talk about them, but I
Yeah,
will
totally.
unintentionally recycle because that's where my brain's at.
Okay, I don't think it's bad, but I'm just tired of reading it. Is
Mm.
the Lost Heir?
Oh,
um,
yeah,
I'm just tired of reading about a character who's unassuming, and then we find out, oh, they're the conveniently the last son of the recently deceased monarch, and they are. It kind of goes back to the Chosen One
yeah,
trope a little bit, where it's okay, but really, like, what are the
yeah,
odds? And um, yeah, like I think you need, if you're gonna do this trope, you have to subvert it at this point because I think it's been done so many times, like the expected way, that
mm-hmm.
you're not going to effectively tell a good story if you're
Yeah.
just retreading old ground.
I
So
agree.
this one is definitely my least favorite from the list, outside of the other one that we mentioned, because I just I don't know. I feel like there's so many different ways you can make a character have influence and power and stuff that don't require them to be like in this role of the Lost Heir.
Yeah.
Like I think there's many different alternatives that you could try before going down that route, but
Yeah.
that's just my opinion. What about you?
No,
How do you feel about those?
I agree. I think I feel less hot about this one than I do the damsel in distress or
Yeah.
the other things. But I think that's a good point. It's like it's almost lazy nowadays to do that. It is just like the arc. I feel like you could creatively come up with a lot of ways to do this. But it is kind of tired now, so it just seems like, oh, surprise, you're actually this. And it's the very like Cinderella kind of concept that is still very pervasive in our culture right now. Like,
Yeah.
if you pick yourself up by your bootstraps, you can become like a multi-billionaire or whatever. And it's like, oh,
Hmm.
you could be the lost heir. I don't know. It's just kind of like, okay, I don't know. And I don't know if this is just the fantasy, my personal opinion on like fantasy needing to still read as like as realistic as possible in the parameters that the writer has,
Yeah.
the author has set. It's like I need it to be believable. So oftentimes it almost seems kind of far fetched for like this random orphan with like no paperwork and whatever to
Yeah.
just like be the next great king or queen or whatever. Um, some authors do it perfectly well,
Hmm.
but I think the shift now is like more ordinary. Again, the anti-hero, the I have no special powers, but somehow I've been roped into all of this shit and I need to like help kind of a thing
Yeah.
is like the way things are going because it just reads more, yeah, more believable and relatable.
Yeah, that's it's interesting you say that because with I feel like in a lot of my writing, like with A Knight of Knives and some of the other stories that I have planned, I focus not on like the lower class of like the the poor
Mm-hmm.
farm boy who is going to eventually become the lost heir, or but I also don't go the complete other direction where I'm like
Yeah,
with the nobility. I am a little bit, but I feel like the main POVs that I choose for my books are usually like somewhere in the middle. They're like more
yeah,
ordinary people, more like
mm-hmm.
working class, I guess I would say, as
Mm-hmm.
working class as you can be in like a feudal society. But yeah, I think I'm like tired of both extremes. So
Yeah,
I fall somewhere in the middle for the most part with my chosen like POVs specifically.
yeah. I totally understand that, and I like when that happens. Mine's a bit different because both are like one's been up, his throne's been taken from him, but he's still like working for the guy who did that, and then the
Hmm.
princess is like literally abused and manipulated all the time, even as a
Yeah.
princess, and doesn't want to be there and doesn't want the responsibility when other people want what she has. So
Hmm.
I think that's always fun to explore, like not just the downsides of like a monarchy and like
Yeah.
living under scrutiny all the time, but yeah, like what do you do when you have all this power and this weight of power and you're not the lost heir, you've just been living this life for most of your life and it's
Hmm.
exhausting. So I think those are fun. I think G.R. Martin definitely brought that as like a popular kind of trope of like the or what's the word, I don't know, I'm blanking on the word, but I used it in my little book spiel. But
Yeah.
um yeah, it's just like not a position or place that you want and how far will you go to like get rid of that responsibility, I think is fun. But yeah, the lost heir is always just kind of like, okay.
Yeah. So
Are
it
you
always gets an
special?
eye roll.
Are you special? Wow. All right, I think so. You did the lost heir.
Yep.
Okay, I'll go
So
with my favorite.
okay, let's see your.
My favorite is enemies to lovers. That is my favorite book in the whole world. Literally. It's my favorite. I
Hmm.
any story that starts off with enemies to lovers, I'm like, sold. I don't even care. I don't care about the premise. I do care about the premise, but if that's in your little hook, I'm already halfway there. So
Hmm.
I think it's so cool to explore how one plot plot happening to characters can force them to get closer together and find similarities amongst their differences.
Hmm.
And I also love seeing characters undo prejudice throughout a story.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's very relatable and appropriate in any day and age.
Hmm.
Um, And I think, I don't know, the witty banter, the snarkiness, like the I don't like you, and then all of a sudden the slow realization over time of like, holy shit, like I actually might like this person is just so
Yeah.
good if it's done so well. Um, that's why I like the fan fiction I like, because it's just like, yeah, let's like feed into this trope of like two people who should not want to be around each other and they don't, but then slowly they learn that they like each other a lot and then they want to do with each other, and that's always fun too. So, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looks like Nicole says if you do like enemies to lovers, to put Forgery of Fate on your list because it will check
Yes.
that box for you.
Excellent.
On looks like you might be finishing that thought, Nicole. So I'll let you wrap that up. Well,
Yeah.
I have not read a story that is like really focused on enemies to lovers. There's been like some fantasy stories I've read that it's more like a side plot, like the
Yeah.
romance arc, but it's never been like the main focus. But I do like it when it's when I've seen it done. I think it's always fun to watch
Yeah.
characters that are so different
Mm-hmm.
come together like that. And like you said, just watching them like undo prejudice sometimes too. That's always fun, and there's always nice banter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add on this one. Just that I do like it, and I think it's a really fun way to create that romantic relationship
Yeah.
between characters.
Yeah. It's, I also like it when like they continue to still be like, you're annoying even after they've
Yeah,
gotten together. Like it doesn't just switch on to be this like lovey-dovey moment. They're still like, you piss me off.
hmm
But they, you know, choose a different path. Yeah, it's my thing. I like it a lot. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be like you said, like in a romance or anything like that. I still enjoy characters in even like good fantasy that are just
hmm
on the same team but really detest each other, and then over time begrudging respect and like, you
yeah,
know, kind of like a, yeah, okay, we can be friends, and then at the end they're like, you're my it's the Legolas and you know, Gimli component of it, right?
yeah,
Like it's just like, yeah, you just enjoy like seeing two different people come together and realize, hey, we can be best friends. So
yeah,
yeah.
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 I didn't even think of like Legolas and Gimli with this, but that yeah, those type of dynamics, like if it's not enemies to lovers, like enemies to friends too.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
those
Right.
are always great.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe enemies and lovers for Legolas and Gimli is not the case. In some fan fiction, I'm sure there is. But in terms of like enemies to allies, enemies to friends, enemies
Yeah,
to friends to lovers, yeah, it's just a good,
yeah,
good. Some
just
people don't like it. Some people
yeah.
don't like it, and I always go, oh, that
It's
sucks to be
interesting.
you.
I don't think
Yeah,
I've read like a bad take on it yet. I'm sure they exist. I'm
I'm
positive
sure.
that the
Yeah,
bad version of every trope on this list,
yeah,
even the good tropes that we like,
yeah. That's true.
exists. So, but yeah, just so far, like the ones that I've read, I've enjoyed all of them.
Yeah,
So,
add some tension.
all right, let me see which one I want to pick here. I'm gonna go with training montage because I think this was one of yours. So,
That was
yeah,
mine.
training montages are I don't know. I feel like they can be done really well or done really poorly. Like
Yeah,
it just
it's
depends.
fine with
So
me.
this is one that I'm kind of neutral on.
Okay.
Because and it's difficult to explain for me what makes a good one versus like what makes it done poorly.
Mm,
I feel like you have to earn the characters like progression and whatever they're training. It can be a nice way to show their progress quickly
mm-hmm.
so that you don't have to spend too much time on it. So I think that it has some strengths, allowing you to focus on like other things that may be more important to the narrative without facing that criticism of, well, how did they get so good at sword fighting or, something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe lean positive on this one with the caveat that it still has to be somewhat earned and like it can't feel kind
Yeah.
of out of nowhere. Like you can't just throw it in as a deflection of that criticism. It
Mm-hmm.
still has to kind of find its place. But yeah, not a whole lot to add on that one. But you were the one who added this to the list. So
I
what are your
did.
thoughts on training montages?
So I'm usually okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually okay with them. Um, a great example of like a training montage that I think worked throughout, like, because it happened a lot, was Arya's arc in, you know, A Song of Ice and Fire. It's like
Yeah.
she got her training with Needle, and then all hell breaks loose, and then she has to travel the world, and then she ends up having these like moments where monks or whoever are training her, or she finds a way to learn, right?
Hmm.
And that came with a lot of pain and uncomfortability and time. I mean, it's years go by, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's taking months and months and months for her to learn. And I think those are my parameters. On the other spectrum, people like Sarah J. Maas will write that these like young women who've like done barely anything after 2 months of training can now like beat the hardest challenge that even the big burly men cannot,
Yeah.
successfully get through. So it has to read believable. And I think the timeline is really important. I don't mind a training montage if it's, we spent a whole spring, summer, winter, next spring, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
clear and evident that they have stayed and it is a long process. It
Yeah.
pisses me off when it's like a 2 month thing because I'm just like, I don't know. I want to see the characters not do well. And I think
Yeah.
that's what also pisses me off a lot of the time on the bad spectrum, on the bad end of the spectrum, is
Hmm.
that all of a sudden they're like infallible fighters.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, no, but like that compared to like 1,000-year-old, like, general, and suddenly you can like hold your, like, there has to still be a,
Hmm.
a weakness, I think, in terms of like, yeah, you're not just going to be magically good after even a year. You got to really work for it, and you still have to have weakness at the end of it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more less of that at the end. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think those are good parameters because I was struggling to nail down like the specifics of
Mm-hmm.
what makes it good versus bad, and I think those are some
Yeah.
pretty good ones. Like it has to be believable, the time frame has to be realistic,
Right.
and we should see them try and fail a little bit beforehand,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
still even after the fact still have their struggles. Like it shouldn't be
Yes.
now you're the best of the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Fourth Wing pissed me off because of that. It's like, oh, a few months in a sparring ring, and now you're like, cool. I don't know. It's just to me, it just is lazy, and it's
Yeah.
like you want this badass character to be badass, and I'm like, right, but like that's not realistic. Even though there are like fantasy creatures involved, I just don't.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. And also, I feel like it's cool to have like an older character or a character from a different path, like be the stronger one compared to like the chosen one, right? I
Yeah.
think that's why Hermione Granger makes a great side character because she is smarter than literally everybody,
Yeah.
and she saves them from death so many times. Not because she's great at magic, she is, but like her intellect is her weapon.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, everyone has to have a fault, and for some reason, like a bad training montage is like, ugh,
Yeah.
okay, like nobody's perfect. So
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note of believability that you touched on, like even though it's a fantasy world, I do that criticism. I don't know if you get the same feeling, but I always kind of roll my eyes at it, like when people throw but there's dragons in it kind of. Yeah, it's like you still have to work with some level of being grounded in reality to me. Like you can't just throw all the rules out the window
yeah,
just because we're in a fantasy world. And
100%.
I'm pretty sure Brandon Sanderson touched on that in one of his recent lectures where
Mm,
he was talking about readers who don't read fantasy. And one of the reasons they say is because anything can happen and they feel like there's no
mm,
stakes.
mm-hmm.
And then he kind of, dove deeper into it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I just always roll my eyes a little bit when someone says that as kind of a deflection of a
yeah,
criticism of a story
it's just
where
not
it's like, well,
true.
nothing's realistic. Well,
Yeah,
I
right.
disagree. But
Yeah, your spy novel is not super realistic just because
yeah.
it happens in across Europe. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, but no, I'm in full agreement. I love it. I think a couple people have done it well, like R.F. Kuang in the Poppy War does it really well. Where it's like a long time has spanned it. She's in school essentially, and even when she comes out of it, she's still not the best, but she's smarter than everybody and works just as hard as anyway. I think there are some fantasy authors that do that kind of montage, quote unquote, really well. And I get it for the sake of time. If you have a lot to do in very few, pages or
Hmm.
restricted timeline, it can be a super effective tool. So that's not to say it can't be done really, really well, because I do like a wax on, wax off moment.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think next trope is yours.
Oh wait, no, wait. Did you just say, or did I just
We did
say?
training. I just did training
Oh, you did
montage, but I
training.
stole
Okay.
yours. Yeah.
No,
So,
that's okay. Um. Okay. Since we talked about dragons, since you mentioned dragons, I like dragons. I love dragons. I was a dragon girl. Girl. I'm tired of dragons. I'm done with dragons for a while. I'm not joking. I don't know. The reason why is because I feel like they're still. How do I put this? They don't read powerful anymore.
mhm.
I think the one fun thing, and I'm sorry to keep bringing Harry Potter up. I know, like a lot of people are going to be pissed, and that's fine. I get it.
Mhm.
But I remember the dragons in Harry Potter being like actually terrifying because
Yeah.
they were just hungry, wanting to protect their brood, dragons. In the way that like Smaug was scary, right? In the way that like despite having keen intellect, he was so smart and he was so terrifying.
Mhm.
Um the dragons in Game of Thrones, sick, because they're just like scary and terrifying and violent.
Yeah.
But like so much of it now in the fantasy space, I don't know. I feel like has just been a little bit watered down. Like they're now these like kind of emotional creatures, which is fine because in lore that can often be the case. But I'm missing some of like the terror. Like this is a behemoth, like this is like I don't know. I'm missing a little bit of that in it. So I love dragons. Huge fan of dragons. Priory
Yeah.
of the Orange Tree did it really really well, I thought.
Oh, okay.
Um
I haven't read that yet, so
yeah,
that's
like this
interesting.
massively destructive like dragon and its horde essentially like almost ripped the world apart, and then, over time dragons are now still terrifying, but in another part of the world you can ride them, and I don't know, it's cool. Like the lore and the world building there is the stakes are high because they're so temperamental and they can be dangerous and there's all this risk there. But that's you have to have that in a lot of the times nowadays. And maybe I'm just being mean because it's like the romantasy verse is just like really inundated with that now.
Mhm.
And I'm over it. Anyway, I feel like I'm really rambling and talking a lot.
Oh no. I'm gonna touch on Nicole's question here real
Yeah,
quick. Did you read The Last Dragon Chronicles by Chris DeLacy?
I did
Book cover
not.
was always. I did read some of those as a kid. I don't think I ever finished the series because I think I slowly, like, just over time, forgot that they were a thing
Mm,
because I was reading other books. But
yeah,
I remember enjoying them when I was younger. So I'll have to go check them out because they're sitting on my shelf, like, directly over there. So I'll have to see if they still hold up to me now.
yeah. Mine was as a kid, my dad told me to read, and I did. The Dragon Riders of Pern,
Mhm.
and those stuck with me as like some fantastic dragons, even though they're like technically wyverns or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think Priory is a great example of like a really modern day good dragon book. Dragon Riders of Pern. I don't know. I think I have a bit more of a serious take when it comes to creatures in
Hmm.
in fantasy novels. So when they
Yeah.
start to get used as like this like sexy thing, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That seems a little weird, but okay.
Yeah. I actually totally agree on dragons. I'm kind of like dragoned out. Like I just have dragon fatigue. Um,
Yeah.
because like you said, there's so many great depictions of dragons. I feel like they're kind of at their peak as far as what I
Mm-hmm.
think they're capable of so far in storytelling. Like uh, Harry Potter dragons. I never read Harry Potter growing up. I watched all the
Yeah.
films though, and when there was a dragon on screen, it was a big moment. It wasn't like a
Yeah.
oh,
Right.
there's another dragon.
You're like,
Um,
whoa.
like even in Goblet of Fire when he's like facing off against the dragon, it's very clear right away that
Yeah.
he cannot hold his own against the dragon.
No.
Um, so yeah, and then Smaug in the Hobbit, just
Mm-hmm.
very cool, very terrifying, especially the scenes where like Bilbo's sneaking around and
Yeah.
he's talking to him and like taunting him. Those
Yeah.
are really cool. I love intelligent dragons because they're not done very often. So that's
They're not. Yeah.
that's something that's fun to read, but I think that's almost like an archaic take on them now. Like I don't see that done
Yeah.
very often.
It's
Um,
the it's almost like the oh god, I'm blanking on the name. The Wizard of Earthsea kind of
mhm.
like style. Yeah, I think it's you're exactly right. I really like the concept of an intelligent dragon. With Fourth Wing, that's why I was so disappointed because I was like, oh, these are like dragons that, kind of talk to you through your mind. And I think that's like such a cool, not done as often trope or whatever, but then it's just like ruined by everything
Yeah.
else. Um, and yeah, like with the new seasons of, God damn it. What's the dragon show?
I'm,
G.R. Martin.
oh, Game of
The
Thrones.
game. Yeah, but the new
Oh,
one.
House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
I'm losing my mind. Like with House of the Dragon, there no spoilers or a few spoilers maybe, but like the scenes where they are literally like she's having to walk out and call them
Hmm.
in the cavern, like I got goosebumps. I still get goosebumps because as it like emerges from the dark, you're like, dude, I would
Yeah.
be shitting my pants. Like that's how scary they should be to me in my mind because they are so cool.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah. I think that's why I have that dragon fatigue. It's just because like I feel like they were done so well in most recently A Song of Ice and Fire and Fire
mm-hmm.
and Blood to like I don't need to see another depiction of them. I feel like I don't
Yeah,
know that you can do it better than that. And I feel like everything that's going to come after that, and except for maybe a long time from now, is going to fall short to that depiction for me. So I just
yeah,
don't really go looking for it. And I do kind of when I see a book has like dragons and dragon fighting as like a core plot point, I do kind of steer away from it just because
yeah,
I feel like I'm not going to one, I'm either not
for
going to
sure.
appreciate it for what it is because I'm going to be comparing it to A Song of Ice and Fire,
Mm,
or I'm just not going to vibe with that depiction of dragons.
yeah,
So yeah, I'd steer away from dragons now too.
yeah. I've got the Shadow of the Gods book literally has a dragon on the cover.
Hmm.
But so far the lore is like the gods fought and killed each other and then their bodies like were bound into the earth or
Hmm.
like rotted into the earth or are trapped. And there's like one god that's trapped in like a volcano and it's like a dragon. So I'm excited whenever that comes to fruition to see like is this going to be a classically like almost like Smaug like destructo force,
Yeah,
like apocalyptic in a way, because that would be fun. Um, or if it's going to be kind of fun. Yeah, but no, I'm in total agreement.
yeah. Nicole says we have creatures in our books, right? Or is she misremembering? I guess I'll go first. I
Mm-hmm.
do. There are some creatures like in the fantasy world, but I feel like in A Night of Knives we don't touch on them too much. You hear about them in like conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a few that you'll see throughout the city, but they're like smaller. Like you're not going to see larger, more dangerous creatures because the first novel is confined to mostly a single city. So I feel like they've done pretty good at keeping them out. So yeah, so they exist in the fantasy world, and you'll hear about them, and you'll hear references and stuff. You just won't really see a lot of crazy creatures, like nothing like The Witcher or anything, and at least in book one here. So,
Yeah,
Ash, you may have more creatures than I
I
do
have
since
a
I'm.
lot. I've got very Witcher heavy, like kind of
Love
always
that.
there.
Yeah.
I think that's just like a part of my nature. It's something I saw like an old Tumblr post and it was like sometimes I forget that other people do not have like the encyclopedic knowledge of weird folklore and creatures that I
Yeah.
do and I was like I can relate to this. I love creatures. I think they're so fun. They're like wandering tribes in my book. They're independent like groups
Hmm.
of creatures like blah. So yeah, I've got a ton.
That's really
It's
cool.
always
Yeah,
fun. Yeah.
I love those kind of takes on it, like the more folklore and Witcher esque vibes.
Yeah.
Just didn't really fit well for book one of A Night of Knives. I couldn't really find a
Sure.
way to sneak them in, but I did.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna get my like monster fix somewhere else after that because
Nice.
I do like writing monsters. I like reading them.
Yeah, I do too.
Just they're just so fun, and there's so many different things you can do with them. So
Yeah, I really love because Baltair's like really he's around them all the time
mhm.
in some capacity, so they don't obviously he's like used to them, but there's like a scene in the second part of book one, where like she's finally kidnapped. That's not a spoiler, but she's finally kidnapped, and they're like out in the woods, and they come across their first big like kind of monster. And it's so fun to write from the perspective of someone who is seeing this like actual horrifying, like poop your pants scary kind of a thing.
Hmm.
Going through that next to someone who's like completely unbothered, I think is really funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to write about that. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, do you want to do a couple more tropes before we get to
Yeah.
our hot topic? Okay, cool.
Sure.
Let's see. We did dragons. I am going to. I'm going to pick this one because I feel like you might have some interesting examples from your own reading
Okay.
on this one.
Sure.
Magical artifacts. So these are another kind of hit or miss for me. Really just depends on the execution.
Uh-huh.
They are one that I think may have the most potential to go wrong, like to be executed poorly on this
How
list.
so?
In the sense of like plot convenience, to where we need to do this, and then we discover the item that does exactly this. So yeah, I think you can do it really bad. But it's such a broad trope. So there's a lot of examples of like
Yeah.
very good magical artifacts and some that are not done so well. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to draw examples from like recent memory, and I'm blanking a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
First Law has a lot of these tropes that we've touched on. It has like magical artifacts, but all of these tropes that like subverts them either in like a really funny, like darkly funny way, or
Yeah.
like it's hard. I don't want to spoil it, but there's like a quest for an item that does not go the way that you would expect at all,
Okay.
based on typical fantasy reading, and it's very interesting. It was very bold to go that route too, in my opinion, for how he did that with like the amount of setup that was there, and then what the payoff is very interesting.
Okay. I love that.
I'm trying to tread lightly here, so it's vague.
Yeah. You're like, I don't want to.
But yeah, what about you? Do you like magical artifacts? I imagine your world has quite a few, right? Or maybe not.
Yeah. No, that's like a good chunk of like the second book. I think I might have touched on this last time we chatted, but yeah, I like a hunt for a magical object. I think that is very it is a classic kind of trope that I've always enjoyed. It's I don't know. It's almost pirate-esque, right? Like
Yeah.
buried treasure kind of component, and then it takes you all over the place. I like the in the way that we discussed at the very beginning, I like the usage for a price. I like when magical objects aren't just this like answer to your problem, and more of like this will help, but at what cost?
Yeah.
I like that kind of subversion of it, because that's at least in my realm of whenever I love a book, it's like it's very Fae-like in my head. It's like, okay, trickery here, and what are you willing to give up or to sacrifice in order to use this thing that could help, to kind of change the tide of the war or whatever. So yeah, I like magical objects. I like a hunt for magical objects, but I like there to be caveats and things that can and do go wrong with their usage. Because I think that's unfortunately what Harry Potter did really well, is like when they start to hunt down like the Horcruxes and stuff, it's like, oh, there are a lot of issues here, but yeah, I like the dark side of usage. So yeah, I'm a fan of a magical object.
Yeah, I think the way you framed them is really good. Like the cost, and it can help, but it's not like the end all be all answer to your problem.
Right. In fact, it can cause more if you're not careful. And so yeah, I take that. All right. Do you want to do one more, or do you want to move to our hot topic?
We can do one more trope. I'll let you pick the final one here.
All right, I'll do prophecies.
Okay.
I'm a fan in the same way. I'm a fan of prophecies. Bye, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
It was good to
Have
see
a good
you.
night.
Yeah, the same caveats with the magical objects. I think prophecies can be overdone. There are quite a few in mind. That's what I'm struggling with right now in terms of like even just creating one like from
Mhm.
scratch. But I like I like prophecies in the same Fey-like sense that are just not straightforward at all, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the fun part about prophecies is that they're supposed to be like vague and
Hmm.
not easily understood, but can very easily be completely misused and overused.
Yeah.
Especially when it's about the chosen one. You
Hmm.
know, when these two things come together, kind of like the concept of stumbling across a prophecy that like you're like, whoa, did not know that this was supposed to be a thing, and now it is,
Yeah.
and now we have to adjust to whatever we've just discovered to kind of enjoy that.
Hmm.
But yeah, in the same way, the magical objects, all that stuff, it's just like use sparingly,
Yeah.
um, and not make that be when it's the main driver of an entire series,
Hmm.
kind of like Harry Potter. But that's when I'm like, nah, I'm okay. Because I feel like it just constricts, and oftentimes, like, the author ends up shooting themselves in the foot or closing themselves in too much and not,
Yeah.
and like, aren't able to take some extreme risks because they feel like they have to kind of narrow that. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. My favorite prophecies are either when they're being like deliberately used by like people in power to perpetuate a certain narrative,
Mm-hmm.
or if the prophecy
Yeah,
is
yeah,
misinterpreted. I love like those sorts of plays on it, because I think,
yeah,
like you said, with like traditional prophecies where it's kind of relating to like a chosen one or something, it's just very overdone in like traditional fantasy. And
yeah,
yeah, I just like playing with prophecies. I think you can do a lot of interesting things with them, and I think they're if you create them in your world and place them right and things like that, it can open up a lot of interesting opportunities for exploring how different characters and even different cultures like think about things. If you have like different
yeah,
interpretations
yeah,
and stuff like that, so yeah, I think they
yeah,
have a lot of room to be like really good narrative tools.
yeah. Me too. Agreed. Are there any
Or
prophecies in A Night of Knives?
no, there are not.
Okay.
I had
I was
Yeah,
curious. I was like, ooh, are you writing a prophecy?
no,
It's
um,
very hard to do
no,
lots
but
of rhyming.
yeah, that mainly I feel like I have enough narrative like mysteries to work out. Um, cool. So, well, yeah, I think
Okay.
we can move
You want to
to
move
the
on
hot
just
topic.
before we lose
Yeah.
you? Okay, okay. All right. So I think for our listeners, old listeners and new listeners, we are gonna do maybe not every episode, but we're gonna start having a hot topic, which is like opinions that people have that we might disagree with, or hot takes on TikTok. So today's first hot topic, and this one's going to be a doozy, I think. Do audiobooks count as reading? Why or why not? And I know this is a point of debate and contention in many spaces. I think I want to hear what your opinion is first, and then I will say mine.
Okay. Am I coming through clearly still?
You're good. You're good now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. At the risk of sounding like I'm trying to sidestep the question, um, I think the whole conversation around do audiobooks count as reading is stupid, and I don't care. Like, I think we're framing the question completely wrong. Like,
Ah, okay.
because
All right.
I think because what do you mean by reading? Because reading has multiple meanings to me. Like, do you
Yeah.
mean consuming a book? Then yeah, you listen to an audiobook, you consumed the book. Are you talking
Yeah.
reading as in the physical sense of looking at words and processing them?
Mm.
Then no, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you ask that question, I feel like people are deliberately trying to see which camp you like fall into there, or I don't know. I feel like the question and the framing around it is kind of
Mm-hmm.
reductive, like to where it's being asked as a yes or no, where I think it depends on what you define as reading. Like, okay,
Sure.
is reading to you consuming a book? Sure, it's reading. if you're asking me if it counts as reading the words on the page, then I guess my answer would be no. But ultimately, I would say I don't care how you consume a book either. Like, if you want to listen to the audiobook, I don't think it's any less valid way of consuming a story by any means. So yeah, I
Yeah.
hope I didn't like avoid the question there. I feel like the debate around it is so strange to me. Like, when people get so invested in whether you say yes or no to that
Yeah.
question.
So I think the reason it matters so much to people
Mm-hmm.
is because, at least on Book Talk and TikTok and then Bookstagram, there is almost now, which is partially why I'm kind of glad I've stepped away, is there's this competitiveness to people now to
Mm-hmm.
read as many books as possible. Every month I often see, here are the 20 books I read this month, and by the end of the year you're seeing I've read 250 books. And in the camp of some people, they're like, how are you reading this many books? It makes a lot of people feel bad and self-conscious that they're not being able to spend the time with their hobby, or they
Yeah.
feel less than because this person has like all these, but whatever. There's a lot going on socially here. It's this weird competitive, I can read more than you nature.
Yeah.
And I think because audiobooks have become such a way to consume books, there's a split here. And it's because audiobooks you can speed up, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can speed up and like listen faster than you can read. That's just true. And the rate at which you are absorbing can sometimes differ so much that
Yeah.
people who just read print media are like, okay, but are you actually absorbing and understanding and all this kind of stuff? So
Yeah.
are you at a 2 times speed audiobook so you can get through, so you can get to the other one in order to like beat your record? Sure, that's fine. But I think it ends up starting to create this kind of like hierarchy of who's more well read than others. So I think that's why it's such a hot debate. I think I take the classical definition of reading as like interpreting symbols visually on like I don't, what the official, I think I looked it up, the action or skill of reading written or printed material, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm of the camp of like you can consume audiobooks and that counts as
Yeah.
like absorbing a book, but I wouldn't call it reading. You're listening, right? I think those
Yeah.
are two very different things. So I'm sure I'll get flack for this, but I
Yeah.
don't think when you listen to an audiobook you're reading. But it's in my mind the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it, if you're like most of my friends and family who like read when they're cleaning or like listen, see, I just did it, listening when you're cleaning or on a car ride or whatever, yeah, it's you're getting it right. The information is there. It's the same as if you would read it, maybe not in the same timeline or ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it counts technically under the definition of reading. And
Yeah.
again, you ask a great question. Why does this fucking matter? And it doesn't. Like, it just matters to people on the internet who are like, I
Yeah.
read 200 books. And then people in the comments are like, okay, how many of those did you actually read? And they're like, does that
Mm-hmm.
matter? And I think it does. I think the speed at which
Yeah.
you listen is much different. So you are able to fly through books much faster if that is your mode of
Yeah.
absorption of literature.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
yeah. But also I think reading,
Yeah.
like, yeah, listening can be super accessible to a lot of people who might not have the time to sit and listen, and they're still not staring at their phone. They're absorbing the information.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think some people do it as like a race, though, and that's where people have problems with. So it's not
Yeah.
actually, it's a non-issue.
Yeah. That makes sense. I
But a hot
think
button topic.
I like what you said about like, are you comprehending what you're reading? How's your reading comprehension? Are you absorbing the story, or are you just listening
Yeah.
to words so you can get to the next book and your tally of books read for the year can go up? I
Mm-hmm.
think that makes a big
Yeah.
difference in how I view it too. But yeah, when like if someone asks or I'm telling someone about like an audiobook I listened to, I've never framed it as I read this. I was always like, yeah, I listened to the audiobook and it was really cool. Or like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
interesting because I've never claimed that it was reading per se when I've like
Yeah.
finished an audiobook, because I
Yeah.
think you're right with that's just not what the definition is. I'm not saying that consumption of a story isn't as valid. as long as you're,
Correct.
actually
That's this. Yeah.
engaging with the story. You're not just, speed listening and then not even paying
Yeah.
attention. But yeah,
Because I
I
do
don't
the
know.
same
It's
thing
such a
when
weird argument.
it is a weird argument, but it is like one of the biggest on like anytime I go on Bookstagram, it's like,
Yeah.
this counts. And I'm like, yeah, guys, like we can talk about this and debate about character arcs or whatever because you both have consumed the book just in different
Yeah.
ways. Even me, like I'll read a page or two of a book and realize I have absorbed nothing of it because my
Hmm.
brain has just like it's lost somewhere else. In the same
Yeah.
way that I know that I can't do audiobooks very often because I will not. I'll get too distracted, and then
Hmm.
17 minutes have gone by, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, and
Yeah.
it's the same thing. So, yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
it's a non-issue to us.
Yeah. You're right. You can totally do the same thing reading physical media too, just kind of like
Yeah,
blank out and skimming the pages and things like that. So yeah, I don't
yeah,
think either one is less valid way to
definitely agree.
consume a story.
I think it just hurts people's feelings when they see people have like gone through so many books,
Hmm.
and it got to me for a while. It was like,
Yeah, same.
golly day, I'm just not. I used to read like a book every other day in middle and high school. I was constantly reading all I wanted to do. I would have 3 books in my backpack just in case I finished one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you get to be an adult and all of a sudden priorities shift and you don't have a lot of time anymore. The onset of audiobooks has been great for that because people can now fill their time. And I think people who either don't like audiobooks or don't, who are often like me, who will start to clean and realize they haven't been paying attention, but
Hmm.
sitting and reading, they can absorb better.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at all these other people being like, crazy that you've written, just makes you feel bad. So I think
Yeah.
the issue is people need to have perspective.
Yeah. Totally.
Anyway, that was our hot topic for the week.
I like that hot topic section though. We're
Yeah.
definitely gonna keep doing those.
We got to do the is writing or authoring if you're not handwriting
I
topic
have
next
that in
time we
like a
talk.
note file because
Yeah,
I know. Yeah.
oh, goodness gracious. If he ever listens to that, he listens to this, he's probably going to get a little angry. Why'd you phrase it like that? But
we'll
we're
get
talking about it. That's what he wanted. So
yeah we'll get approval on the final wording of the question before we.
there will never be any of that. No, we're just gonna have to put it out and hope for the best.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of Quill and Query. Ash, did you have any closing thoughts or anything? I think we are alone on the TikTok, so I'll just
Classic.
post the question to the audience on YouTube. If you guys have any feedback or questions or suggested topics or anything, leave those in the comments. Would love to see those. But yeah, that's really all from me. Anything from you?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, even if it's just putting in the comments like what you're currently reading, that way you can see like who's reading what and put more books on our TBRs. Just more engagement. Sounds like we're begging for it, but also we just like really want to know what people want to listen to and like talk about.
Yeah.
It's more like research purposes rather than
yeah, totally.
we'd
Like if there's
both, but
like if there's a part of Quill and Query that you just skip every week, just tell us. Like
seriously.
I don't know, just something like
Something.
just a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, we can't get better unless we hear, hi, I'm reading Servant of Earth. Ooh, that sounds good. Is that like a sci-fi?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, me neither.
But hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's it for Quill and Query. As always, Ash, thanks. That was such a fun discussion on fantasy tropes. And I think we have some saved still, so we could always revisit those at another point. So
fantasy. Awesome. We'll have to look into it.
All right. Thanks everyone who was able to join us, and
appreciate it.
I will see you on the next episode.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye guys.